Hi guys, I'm Jared from Cleveland Software Design, and today I'm going to be showing you how to fully assemble your new mini machine parts kit. So for today, we only need 3 screwdrivers. You need a small Phillips head, a small flathead, and then you could get away with those two, but I'm going to use also like a regular Phillips screwdriver. Let's just get into it. So I'm going to open it up. We pack these kind of well, so it might be a little hard to reach out of there. Set that aside for a second. Oh, and don't actually forget, inside one of these, you're going to also get a power supply and its cord. If it's me doing the packing, it's very likely I'm going to throw in also the USB cord in here. But sometimes it'll be in another bag in there, so just keep a heads up for that. So, first parts are going to be those power supply. Set that there. And then find where it's taped up. Undo the bubble wrap. And here we are. This is what will come just immediately out of the box when you get your mini machine. It'll all fit right in this box. You're going to see like it's packed in there. Everything's bubble wrapped just to keep everything from knocking into each other. But yeah, initially out of the box, all you're going to get is the power supply and then the mini machine itself. One other thing before we get going, this is like a very high gloss design for the plastic molding. It can very easily scratch. So before we get into it, I'm going to actually lay some padding down so that we don't get any scuffs or scrapes on the top and ruin this beautiful machine. One thing that you can do if you don't have anything on hand is actually reuse the bubble wrap and maybe some of the packing paper. So I'm going to go ahead and set that up right now before we get into it. All right, so after you have your working surface up, we can go ahead and begin. So let's open this guy, come around to the back, and be careful not to just force it open. There is a tab right here connected to the top piece that keeps the back plate in place. So when you're undoing it, don't just force it out. I've had maybe like one or two that just broke right off the top. So be a little careful when you're doing that. It should just easily lift out like that. I could set that there again on a padded surface. Here's some of the packing material. Here we have our button wire and a couple button rings for the front panel. I'm going to set those off to the side. Then we have our 4 buttons that'll all go in the sides here. And then RGB, some other colored buttons that'll also go in the front. And then this is kind of a bag of everything you need for the back plate, including some other stuff that holds some of the screws that hold this together, your green terminals that will be used for the connection into the mini board. You got a USB-C, and I even threw in a sticker sometimes. Oh, some of our feet will be in here too. Then we have our solenoids. Next, we have the hardware for the plunger. So everything with our like plunger mount, the cord that goes into the mini board, and the potentiometer that will actually keep track of the movement of the plunger, and the plunger itself. And then finally, we have our Hen 1 mini board. Comes with the chip, the 2 life extenders, 2 MOSFETs. This is the thing that's going to be running everything on the board. So very important, pretty fragile, so be kind of careful when handling that. All right, so from here, I'm going to organize some of our stuff. Probably going to cut that out and just get all of our parts in working order. And then we're going to take a look at our backplate. All right, so we have our backplate here. So first, I'm going to open this bag right here. Let's get out the contents. And some of it we can just set to the side. But for this part of the assembly, we'll need the USB-C connection. We'll need the cord that'll run from the power supply into our mini board. And then we'll need these 2 long screws that will fit into the USB-C connection right here and actually attach that to the back plate. And then we'll need at least some of the screws in here, the silver ones that'll attach the mini board to the back plate itself, and the 2 terminal, which will be used for this. I always like to start right here with this guy, and you'll notice he'll have 2 pieces. He'll have a washer and a nut right there. So we're going to take our back plate, place this cord through there, being careful not to scratch anything up. Line that up as best you can. And then throw the nut on there. And you can just tighten this by hand. I've noticed that works fine, but it can come loose. So you can also just take another tool if you'd like, actually tighten that up a bit more. Just by applying pressure from the other side. And another thing that I just do, these terminated ends can be a little bit long. So you usually just take a wire cutter and almost cut them in half. So they're just easier to work with when putting into this terminal. So at this point, we're going to grab our flathead screwdriver and undo the terminal. You're going to want to pay attention to which one the positive is going to be flowing through and the negative is going to be flowing through. And you can see corresponding on the mini board, actually, there's going to be, this is the 2 terminal that holds the power right here. On the left side, you're going to see labeled the positive, and on the right, you're going to see the negative. So just make sure you put that in the right one, because your machine won't work properly, or it might even cause damage to the board if you wire this wrong. So really pay attention right here. All right, once that's done, we can put on our USB-C connection. So you can take the screws out of here, flip it over, and I like to hold this up to the back like that. And get the initial few rotations just with my fingers. And once you get the first few, you can go ahead and use a screwdriver, or like I said, I'm going to cheat, so I'm going to use some power tools just to speed things along. And be really careful if you're using power tools as well. It's really easy to slip and scratch your machine as well, so just be careful. So now that we have that fixed, we can place our mini board onto the mounts, and you're going to mount it to these screw holes or standoffs right here. And one thing you might notice when you place it on, at least at this time, is that it doesn't quite fit. Now, don't worry about that. You can still get a very strong hold, and the wood that's going to fit below it still fits. It's like a perfect fit right now. But Phil's actually working on a new mini board that'll actually be designed to fit right in here. But if it's a little awkward, don't worry, it's going to work perfectly fine. So I'm going to come in here, like I said, and just get out the silver screws. These are going to be our board mounting screws. And also be careful Make sure to get it tight, but don't go too tight because you might crack the board. So just heads up on that. Then give it a little test to see if it's firmly in place. All right, we're good. And we can attach our power and then our USB-C connection. All right, and that's part one. Let's move on to, we're gonna set this aside and move on to doing the plunger. I'm gonna grab this bag right here and take out the contents. And watch, there might be some loose screws in here, especially some very small screws. So be careful not to lose anything. So what we have here in this bag, we have our potentiometer. It's going to track the movements of the plunger, and it connects via this terminal to our main board or our mini board. This will connect like this to this hardware plate, which will actually affix the plunger to the molding itself. And then these screws will be used for the back plate, and these small attachment screws are going to be used here for the potentiometer. And this is what's the piece that is going to attach your plunger to your potentiometer. First of all, our back plate, and a little trick I like to do, it can be a little tricky to get the plunger and everything attached because you're working with a closed surface on top. It can only come in from one direction. So the little trick I like to use is take one of the plunger screws first, pop it in the bottom, then take your potentiometer and fit your screws through there. And with a small Phillips, attach these two pieces first before you do anything else. Okay, so we have the potentiometer attached to our mounting plate. So you're gonna place it right here, facing this way down. So you're gonna be working everything upside down. Plunger's gonna go in. Oh, I just realized we actually have to fix our plunger really quick. The best way to do this is take your flat head, pop off this rubber piece, and then there's another piece right here holding back the spring. So hold on to the spring. It will just shoot off. So be careful. You're going to take that piece off, slide that piece on that holds our potentiometer to our plunger, and reaffix this. You might need to apply pressure from the table. That's what I find is the easiest thing to do. Make sure that's in place. Slide the rubber piece back on, and you're good. Should look like that. All right, now we're going to put our plunger in, put our mount and everything on. If you can see the potentiometer slider right here, try to put that in before you put everything on. Because if you forget later, it'll be a hassle taking everything apart. So make sure that's in there. Then I like to get a few initial screw turns here, and then make sure it's level at this point, because if you screwed in wrong, it'll be slightly off center. So make sure everything's just square and level. And this is the part where I like to use regular size screwdriver. And then put in our other screws for the mount. Make sure you're keeping everything square. Get it fairly tight. Doesn't have to be on there like absolutely crazy tight, but a nice firm grip for the mount is ideal, so you don't have the plunger sliding around. Tighten the screw back up. All right, and that's our plunger. You can hold on to this right now. I mean, you can plug it in, but I'm going to set it off to the side. And now we're going to move on to the next step, which is our buttons. So go ahead and grab the bag with your button wires in it and your button rings. You can grab the flipper buttons and your regular LED and your RGB buttons, and we can start doing our buttons. This is the part of the mini machine that'll take probably the longest because we have 9 buttons in total, and these buttons especially can be a little bit trickier to get on and require a little bit of assembly before we get going. So we're actually going to start with those. Set these to the side then and open up our buttons. So in each bag you'll see 2 components. You'll see the actual button with the lighting cable coming out, and then you'll see the button mechanism and a couple button rings. So we're going to take all these out of the bags, and sometimes this piece right here will actually be loose or undone. And you'll see it hanging out and the spring out. Don't worry, nothing's wrong. You can just go ahead and pop that right back in, and it should be good to go. So come over here, take out our button wire, and we're going to need for the button wire, and then I like to put the negative on the bottom and the positive on the top, like that. And then I always like to start on the right side. So we're going to take one of our buttons, slide in button 1, and throw our button ring on. And the threading here can be a little difficult. So yeah, it might take a while to actually get it on. This one doesn't seem to be as difficult. And don't tighten it all the way, because how these button rings are designed, they're designed to have a really, really tight hold to make sure it's still able to move around or be undone if you need to switch things around. Especially because putting in this next button can cause problems, and you'll see what I mean here in a second. All right, so keep that one loose. And what I meant by cause problems is when you're attaching these, especially on the right side where the plunger is, if you do it wrong, this will be caught up here and run into the wood. You want to place these actually facing as far down as you can so that they don't run into anything on the bottom, especially depending on where you place your solenoids. That can have effect. I'm going to put this back one on first. Get placement. And we're going to throw on the smaller button ring. And you can go ahead and tighten this all the way if you'd like, or if you're not feeling confident, you can leave it loose until the end of the button process, just to be safe. Go ahead and slide the other one on, and then same process, put the button ring on and tighten. That guy tight. Now that we have these affixed, I'm going to go ahead and tighten these buttons. So this top one, you can see it runs into the back part here. I like to leave a little bit of room between the plunger mount and this button right here. So find a good spot between where the bottom wood panel is going to go and then this mountain right here. So I like to do just above that. And then this bottom one, it doesn't matter as much. But I'm going to go ahead and get the wires in a better position. It will just make it easier to hook up later. And we'll move on to the other side, which is going to be the same thing, but honestly a little easier because the plunger's not there. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. All right, leave that guy a little loose. Throw in our other button. Still leave that guy a little bit loose. And then we can throw on these. Start with the back one. Okay. Throw on the front one. And put on the smaller button rings. That nice and tight. All right. And now that we have all these buttons in place, go ahead and tighten them up. Again, I like to put them towards the top, just so if you, depending on where you place your solenoids, it'll be a little bit more free. And we'll move on to the next set of buttons. So these type of buttons, if you get the, these are LED, but if you get the non-lighted, they'll look a little bit different. But they'll all come as these type of buttons. When hooking them up, you see two different parts. You see right here, a couple connectors on the gray part. That will actually control the button press. So when you press the button, that completes the circuit, and that will do the button input. And these connectors right here go into the LED. So those are the two different parts, and those will come into play when putting it into the mini board. The buttons will go on top. All of the LEDs will go on the bottom. Another thing to note about these buttons, you'll see a positive side and a negative side. So just keep note which side's going to be positive and which side's going to be negative. You'll see the plus sign and the negative sign. And both the positive will be on the same side, both the negative will be on the same side. So we're going to go ahead and wire all these together after taking them out of the bags. And the RGB, it only has one terminal for the button press, so a little bit easier to wire. All right, so we got all of our buttons wired. And again, make sure you're paying attention to the negative, positive connectors, because that will have an effect. So we're going to be placing our buttons on the front, and then the RGB leaf button on the top. So the order that we usually take, we do white, green, blue, red, and that's what I'd recommend because we have our factory settings connected to those. I mean, if you change colors, you'll just have to keep aware. That's how we pre-program it. So be aware that the button's are already mapped out, but you can go back in and configure that yourself, but those are just the base factory settings that we make them. So go ahead and take your buttons, place those in. And what you can do, slip the button ring on. And these ones are a bit easier. So you can just do a nice tight connection right there. So that's in place. Let's get the top RGB button. Let that guy in. Okay, and that should about do it for the buttons. The next thing we're going to do is take a look at the placement of our solenoids. So for this final part, you're going to need your 2 solenoids and your solenoid screws. And one thing to note about these solenoids, we made a slight adjustment on these version 4 solenoids. You can see here, if you have any of our other solenoids, that the throw is slightly smaller than what we have on a cabinet, because the scale here is a lot smaller than what you'd have on a cabinet. And we recommend keeping it here. But if you'd like to adjust it, you can. With this, it really only goes maybe 1 more out, and it gives a great loud knock. But we recommend keeping it right here because the noise is great at this setting. So another thing, how I have this set up, this side is the back. You can see the little divot right here where it's going to fit into the back piece right here. I'm going to sit on those, and this is the front side. So when I'm done placing them, I'll place them, and then I'm just going to flip it and put it in. So this side is going to be the right side, and this side is going to be the left side because I'm just flipping it upside down. But it is backwards, so take note of that. You can place these solenoids in a lot of different places. I recommend in the middle, and then maybe an inch or 2 from the side. It's really important on the right side because you have the plunger here, but it does fit under the potentiometer right there. You just don't want to be so close to the back here. You want to leave a good amount of space because it ends up hitting these terminals right here when you're plugging everything in. So my recommendation is to put them right there, about, again, centered, and then an inch or 2 in. And I like to try to line up where those are going to make the knock. It's right there. And then make sure you have your wire out of the way so it's not getting pinched. There's a little gap under here. You'll see it fit in, but make sure it's not pinching because it can snap the wire or cut it. So everything in order, and I'm going to go ahead and screw those in. And then if you remember from our first bag, we have this 4 terminal that connects into the mini right here, and we're going to want to hook that up. But really important note with these solenoids, we do have the outputs already pre-mapped in the factory settings. And you can actually see right here, it'll have the number 1 and the number 2. So the left side is going to be output 1, and the right side is going to be output 2, and it's going to be flipped. So on your right side, this side is going to be button 1, and the right solenoid is going to go into output 1 right here. And this button right here on the left-hand side and the left-hand solenoid is going to go into output 2 right here. So be aware of that. If you hook it up wrong, you'll press on this side and you'll hear the left solenoid go off, or you'll press on the left side and you'll hear the right-hand solenoid go off, which can be a little annoying. So going to unscrew this terminal using our flathead, and going to take our right-hand solenoid into, again, the left side so it matches with output 1. And then we're going to do the left-hand side solenoid with the right side of the terminal to correspond to output 2. Give that a pull to make sure everything's secure and properly fastened. And that's really the whole construction of the mini machine. So we're going to hook everything up. We're going to connect everything and then screw it all together, and we'll be done. So we got plunger, button pressing, so all the gray on these buttons, and the button wires on these buttons all go here, so make sure you get those right. So yeah, the gray ones in there, and then just these all plug into there. And then all your RGBs go into those. Make sure you have the yellow facing up on this when you put it in. And then the LEDs for these buttons go here. So I'm going to wire everything up, and then it'll be time to screw everything in. So also note, it's important, so we do have this all mapped out, that you do this correctly. You'll see the buttons are all numbered here. This button right here is going to be button 1, This is going to be button 2. This is going to be button 3. This is going to be button 4. And then on the inside, this is going to be, the white's going to be button 5, green is 6, 7 is blue, 8 is red, and then your RGB is 9. So follow the order that I take. So again, yellow is going to be facing up. And then for these ones, the JSD connections go into the top. So 1, 2, this one's 3. This one's going to be 4. Right. Now, the white is going to be 5. And remember, gray, the part going into the gray piece that does the button press will go into the top, and the one going directly into the button goes in the bottom. So white is 5. Next is green, which is 6. Blue, which is 7. Red, which is 8. And then 9 is the RGB. Okay, going to do our plunger connection. Then connect our solenoids. And now that we have everything wired up, and we're going to put it together. So start with the wood board with the solenoids. Go ahead and slide that in the grooves very gently, testing to see if you placed your solenoids in a spot that would get anything. Goes to the back, it's not hitting anything. You can even check if the solenoid is making contact with anything. I don't see it is, because if it's touching the button, the buttons won't work. If it's touching the plunger, that might short things out, but it's not on this, so we're all right. And then fit this groove into here, and don't worry about clipping it here yet. It's easier if you just fit it on the bottom and then flip it over on the top like that. And then carefully, I'm going to pull back up the top and slide that in. And there we go. We have the mini machine together, and we just need to put in some of our screws. So flip it around and grab the bag, and you can pour these out. Also note, there are 2 different kinds. There is a kind of longer piece that is designed to go straight into the plastic and make a plastic on plastic connection. And then there is a shorter and stubbier one that is a wood screw. So note the difference there and make sure you're using the right screw. But it should be, there's a plastic one that goes here, and then plastic one here and here, and then here and here, and then wood on the bottoms. So I like to start with this top screw. I find that it just kind of brings everything together. And careful again, if you slip, you can scratch it pretty easily. So if you're using power tools, just be careful. Make sure you get a nice tight hold, and it actually pulls it together. And the way I like to do this is I do one of the bottom ones here, and then I do the wood ones, but I guess it doesn't really make too much of a difference. Flip it around. And the last 2 screws. Okay. And one final thing before we move on to do our feet. If you have a mat or something like that, just or like a surface that'll hold the mini machine, you might not want to put on the feet. I've seen people use, like a mat or like a rubber mat or something. But we do supply some feet. Right now, we're using kind of these stops right here. We're looking at actually changing these to kind of a larger foot that'll actually screw right into the wood. So if you're watching this, we probably have already made that change. I'm going to place these right on the corners. And in the front, make sure to get the corner right there. Maybe give it a couple presses and hold it for a little bit so everything sets. But yeah, there we go. That's the full construction of the new mini machine. Hopefully that was clear. If not, you can leave any comments you may have in the comment section, and me or Phil will do our best to get back to you, answering any questions, or you can even have any suggestions for anything we might want to look into, things we might want to add, features we might want to do. We're all ears to that kind of thing. And right now, the only color that we have is this blue. We are actually looking into getting a nice black color, probably maybe the same gloss. I'm not entirely sure. I do really like this Cleveland Software blue that we have here. It kind of gives it a retro look. But yeah, that's the video. Hopefully you guys really enjoyed that. We're able to get good information out of that.